Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're just about to start in a moment. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to the Cabinet meeting of 17th of July. We've got, as usual, a packed agenda. And I'd be grateful if people would pay due regards to the fact that other members are here, residents and other interested parties, and give everybody the opportunity to hear everything that goes on this evening. Okay, item number 1 is about filming at meetings. I just want to make a formal statement. Please note, this meeting may be filmed or recorded by the Council for live or subsequent broadcast by the Council's internet site or by anyone attending the meeting using any communication method. Although we ask members of the public recording, filming or reporting on the meeting not to include the public seating areas, members of the public attending this meeting should be aware that we cannot guarantee that they will not be filmed or recorded by others attending the meeting. Members of the public participating in the meeting, for example, making deputations, asking questions or making oral protests, should be aware they are likely to be filmed, recorded or reported upon. By entering the meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. The chair of the meeting, that's me, has the discretion to terminate or suspend filming or recording if, in my opinion, continuation of the filming, recording or reporting would disrupt or prejudice the proceedings, infringe the rights of any individual or may lead to the breach of a legal obligation by the Council. Right, that's the exciting bit done. Item number 2. Apologies.
Chair, we have no apologies for absence.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is any items of urgent business.
There are no items of urgent business, Chair.
Okay, item number 4 is a notice of intention to conduct business in private. Any representations received and the response to any such representations.
There were no representations received at the agenda publication stage in relation to the exempt items on the agenda, Chair.
Okay, item number 5, declarations of interest. Do Cabinet members have any declarations of interest to make? Councillor Hearn.
Was the chair of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel. 2 of my reports are here today, and a member of the Scrutiny main committee, which heard the Parks review as well. So I obviously can't be making decisions there because I was part of the recommending body.
Thank you very much. Councillor Blake.
Similarly to Councillor Hearn, I was involved in the Children's Scrutiny Review reports, so I'd ask to be exempted.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brabazon.
I was involved in the Scrutiny Review of Social Housing, so just to declare that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ibrahim.
I was also involved in the Scrutiny Review of Social Housing and on the main Scrutiny Committee last year.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 6, minutes of the previous meeting. You will find them in your pack, pages 1 to 26. Can we confirm that the minutes of the meeting held on 26 are a correct record? Guys, that's a question. Can we confirm it's correct? Agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much. Item number 7 is deputations, petitions, questions. We have received requests for 3 representations at this meeting this evening. The first representation will be put forward by Dan Labad of Lendlease in relation to the Come on, guys, this is not a pantomime, okay? All right, at item number 8. The second deputation is from Ms. Mirka Moreira in relation to item 9 on the agenda, the Fairness Commission launch. And the third representation is put forward by Unison in relation to the Shared Digital Services Implementation Report at item 12. Okay, we're going to start today we're going to start this meeting by considering the representation from Dan Labad from Lend-Lease, and then we'll move on to item 8 of the agenda for discussion.
Can you hear me now? Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. As was represented by the leader, I'm Dan Labad, responsible for Lend-Lease's European operations. I've been given 5 minutes, so we'll try to make this as short and succinct as possible. We've been working with the Council to support your housing ambitions for 3 years. We accept you do not want to progress with a HDV model developed by the previous administration. That's something that we accept. Instead, I want to focus on the things that I think we do agree on. With 10,000 households on your waiting list, Haringey has an urgent need for new homes and the investment and capability to deliver them at pace and at scale. The Council rightly wants to stay in control of public assets and minimise its exposure to risks. It needs to ensure that it sets the agenda in terms of the level of social and affordable housing, and that all of its policies are adhered to, e.g. the right to return. The Council can't do all this on its own. Neither can the private sector. We need to work in partnership, and the Council needs capable and willing partners who will commit to the borough's agenda. The partnership framework procured for the HDV is flexible enough to enable all of these things, and today I'm here to offer you that flexibility. This is the clear advice we have from an independent QC who is an expert in the field of public procurement. As your report highlights, the Council has invested a lot of time and taxpayers' money over the course of 4 years. All we are asking is that you take a little longer to explore these options and these opportunities with us. I'd simply like a conversation with you on how we may be able to work together to meet your needs. Your needs, not ours, your needs. Unfortunately, the public procurement process for the HDV did not allow us to engage directly or communicate with the local community. We were not allowed to do so. However, at High Road West, we have been able to engage since we signed the contract in December with the local community, and we already have an extensive program of activities which my colleagues presented to the leader recently. Local people benefiting from regeneration. I would like to... I would also like to invite you all
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I do think that it's irrespective of your personal views, Dan deserves to be heard in silence, so please allow him to speak without interruption, please.
I would also like to invite you all to visit Elephant Park in Southwark, where we have worked closely with the Council and local community for the last 8 years. I'd really like you to come down and see for yourselves. Meet and speak to Council representatives, meet and speak to community representatives of your choosing. We have nothing to hide as an organisation and very proud of the work that we're delivering across London. It's right for local authorities to decide and determine what is needed in the communities that they represent, like the level of affordable and social homes. From our perspective and from the private sector side, what's important to Lend-Lease is that once we enter an agreement Our job is to keep our word and deliver on what we have promised. Yes, Lendlease is a business, and of course we exist to make a profit for shareholders, but not at any cost. Our success and our business model in London and around the world is predicated on successfully serving the communities we operate in, serving our partners and all stakeholders. We work in partnership with governments all around the world, and we only win more work if we meet the needs of our government partners and their communities. We've made a very significant investment over the last 3 years in good faith, and don't want to stand by and just see all of that investment thrown away in a matter of weeks, especially when the need for partnership hasn't changed. Personally, I would find it absolutely heartbreaking to think that we might throw away the opportunity to transform thousands of lives. This is literally once in a generation opportunity. An opportunity to deliver on the Tottenham vision, for young people to experience life chances equal to the best in London. Having just had a daughter in recent weeks, this vision means everything to me. We don't need to work in Haringey. We have a lot of other business on in London, but we very much want to. There is a great fit between our capability, our respective capabilities, and your needs. We are ready and prepared to work with you in exactly the ways you've set out in your recent manifesto, keeping you very much in control of everything that happens in our partnership. This includes you supporting the creation and delivery of a wholly owned council housing delivery vehicle. We will support you doing that under our partnership. I'm very happy to answer any questions that anyone has, but would just ask that you please take some more time to explore the decision that you're considering here tonight, not for our sake, but for the sake of the people of Haringey. We stand ready to deploy significant capability and significant investment to achieve your objectives across the borough, and we can do so in a structure that maintains council control, ensuring no development occurs without yours and the community's approval. All I'm asking today is you defer the decision so we have the time to have a proper conversation with our teams and explore the possibilities of what we can achieve if we work together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation today. Obviously you're aware that we're going to be having a broader conversation about this here and later on. Right, first and foremost, any questions for Mr Labad? Councillor Tucker.
Noah Tucker, Cabinet Member for Insourcing and Corporate Delivery. Mr Labad, can you confirm that all of the options which you are proposing involve a transfer of property assets, in other words, at least at the initial stage, the Council's commercial portfolio, from a situation in which they are owned and controlled by Haringey Council to a situation where they are outside 100% Council ownership and control?
So, thank you, Councillor Tucker. So, one of the options in consideration involves the 100% transfer of commercial assets, but other options we can explore won't involve the transfer to 100% ownership. So that's my point about flexibility. We have the flexibility to explore different options. And all we'd like to do is meet with you to talk about those options so that they can be fully considered.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, one of the things that was proposed in the development vehicle was around delivering a socio-economic programme to support local residents in North Tottenham. Could you expand upon what that might have looked like, please?
So there were a number of socio-economic investments that we'd make starting straight away, so before anything is delivered, not dissimilar to what we're doing at High Road West at the moment. So that would include the setting up of employment and skilling vehicles, and we could use our portfolio not just in Haringey but around London to employ local people until development in Haringey reached full productivity, because obviously it takes time to get off the ground. It also includes the setting up of a social investment vehicle, and again this is one of many things, but it would involve the investment over 20 years of £20 million of investing. But what we'd be looking to do with that investment is leverage other funding so that effectively it became much bigger than the $20 million initial investment. And there are a couple of the things, but there are obviously many more as part of the full partnership suite.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Dan, Mr. Labad, thank you very much for your time today. What we're going to do, we're going to move straight to the discussion of the report, and there are a number of exempt items, and we will continue the discussion of this report in the exempt part right at the end of the meeting. All right, before we move on to item 8, I understand that our monitoring officer has to make a particular statement.
Members are reminded of their duty to approach today's decisions with an open mind. You must take into account all relevant considerations before you come to your decision. This includes giving sufficient attention to the points raised both in the officer's report as well as in any representations made to you today and any representations received from Lend-Lease, including any correspondence.
Okay, just for the record, we have received 3 letters from Lend-Lease with regards to this particular report. We've also recently replied to the 3rd letter, and all Cabinet members should have all of the relevant documentation in front of them, and we'll need to take this into consideration when we make our final decision. And again, just to remind people that this report has exempt information which will be considered in private at the final part of the meeting. Therefore, you are again reminded that the exempt information shouldn't be brought into the public part of the meeting. The report on the HDV, it has to be clear that this administration was elected on a promise to build council houses on council-owned land. There was also a There was also a key commitment to house Haringey's people, creating a diverse mixture of housing options and housing tenures for Haringey's residents. We remain committed to doing the best for Haringey and delivering the best for Haringey's residents. There can be little disagreement amongst those that love our borough about the importance of tackling poverty and deprivation, providing access to housing and jobs, and securing a sustainable future for the public services that we provide. However, we take the view that proposed HDV has shown how strongly opinions differ inside and outside of the Council about the best way to address these important issues. Building on the commitments that we made during the recent elections, we are now taking decisive action to set a new direction for the Council. With this final decision, if we take the view as recommended in the report that we will not progress with the HDV. We know, and again for the record, we know that a decision like this should not and must not be taken lightly. It's something that, as we set out in the report, has to be an informed decision which we are taking with our eyes wide open, having looked at all of the available options that meet with our objectives. We recognise the work done to develop the HDV proposal by the bidders, particularly including work done directly by Lend-Lease. This decision is neither a reflection on the quality of that work nor of their desirability as a partner. Indeed, we remain grateful to Lend-Lease for the interest that they've shown in Haringey and its future and for their commitment to other partnerships. However, a decision of this significance must be taken having weighed the risks and the demerits against the benefits, and this administration has taken a different view on that balance from the previous one. Finally, we know that the residents and businesses of Haringey will expect us to offer a clear alternative vision for how we tackle the challenges we face. And amongst other reports today, we will start to show what that will look like. Okay. Cabinet members, colleagues, any questions on the open part of the report? Okay, we've got a report everybody's happy with. Councillor Ajay.
Thank you, Leader. I was just wondering if you could confirm whether we are likely to be continuing with the engagement of the Northumberland Park estate renewal.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ajay. For that, I'm going to pass on to Councillor Brabazon for a response.
Thank you, Councillor Ejiofor. I'm just moving to the section of the report. You bear with me for a moment. We're on page 42, I think. I think it's set out in the report that we will be working with residents in Northumberland Park. That is our intention, to do community development work and talk to people about their wishes and their aspirations for their estate, both in terms of housing and in social and economic regeneration.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brabazon. Cabinet, any other comments, any other questions for the open part of the report? Let's be clear that we'll be able to have frank discussions about some of these issues in the private section later. Okay, then being no further questions. Okay, I'm advised Councillor Barnes is in the audience somewhere.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. The first one is that 4.1.3b states that all bidders are responsible for their own costs and the council will not fund the costs of any bidder in applying, etc. Yet 6.26 explains that we're due to repay 50% of the agreed costs to Lend-Lease. So under what circumstances and for what reason was the agreement to share costs entered into? And then in paragraph 6.36, it reveals almost half of the cost of the HDB to date has been on external legal advice. If Lend-Lease does decide to pursue legal action against the council, what steps will the council take to prevent HDB associated legal costs escalating even further? So, for example, does the contract enable the council to require Lend-Lease to seek to resolve the dispute via arbitration or mediation rather than the courts?
Thank you for that, Councillor Barnes. I'm going to use both my hands for this. The first one to the left, I'm going to go Dan.
Yes, so on the question of bidders being responsible for their own costs and the distinction between that and the so-called agreed costs. So, yeah, it was stated up front and was always true that bidders were responsible for the costs to the bidding companies of conducting the procurement process, and that remains the case. The agreed costs, which the report proposes we contribute half of, were not costs to Lend-Lease of bidding in the process. They were instead costs incurred by Lend-Lease, agreed between us and between the council and Lend-Lease, effectively incurred on behalf of the HDV, so work undertaken, as it were, for the benefit of the HDV, but before the HDV was formally set up. And that, of course, with the intention that the costs would be effectively reimbursed by the HDV to Lend-Lease once the HDV was established, but with the agreement, obviously, that if for any reason the HDV was not established, because the same principle that would have been true in the HDV, i.e. that the costs would have been shared because the HDV was a 50-50 vehicle, so similarly those costs would be shared between Lend-Lease and the council in the event that the HDV was not set up. And so that's the distinction between the two. There's the Lend-Lease costs of procurement on the one hand and the kind of costs on behalf of the HDV on the other.
Okay, I'll pass your second question on to Zena Etheridge.
Thank you, and if there's anything that Bernie needs to add, he'll do so. Councillor Barnes, I think the question was, is there anything in the contract which requires, for instance, mediation? The simple answer to the question is that no contract has been entered into.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barnes. I'm not seeing any other councillors having indicated a desire to speak. Okay, what we're going to do is we will... I'd like to thank Mr Labad for coming in today. We're going to have this conversation as a broader discussion in the exempt part, at the exempt part of the meeting at item number 19. Okay? Right. The next one, we've got another deputation coming, which is from Ms Mirka Morera, who's coming to speak to us, a deputation leading into the Fairness Commission. Just we're going to have a moment's break as she comes down from upstairs, so just give us 1 moment, please.
What do you mean? Have I?
Hi, I'd like to thank you very much for coming to make your deputation to the Cabinet today. You will get 3 minutes to address the Cabinet, and then we're going to invite Cabinet colleagues to put questions to yourself and your deputation party. Following this, the Cabinet member will respond to the issues raised in your deputations, and the Cabinet will continue to consider the report in question. Please, whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, councillors. My name is Mirka Morera, and I have the privilege this evening to speak on behalf of the Save Latin Village in Wars Corner campaign. Thank you for accepting our request for a deputation on the Fairness Commission. We welcome the Fairness Commission and would like to congratulate Haringey Council's new cabinet for taking this step. Successful Fairness Commissions are predicated on change. Change works to use the levers of local government to bring about more fairness in crucial areas such as accessible, affordable and high-quality childcare, genuinely affordable housing, meaningful youth provision and health and inequality. We hope this represents an opportunity for a fresh start, for dialogue, for a genuine partnership with the borough's #1 regeneration resource, its people. In terms of these crucially important policy areas and why they are so integral to a successful Fairness Commission, this is borne out by the reports and recommendations of the 23 other Fairness Commissions. They all came to the same conclusions in these 3 policy areas. Research undertaken by the New Economics Foundation backs this up. The Council therefore already has a blueprint for what a successful Fairness Commission looks like and entails. The good community work that takes place at the Latin Village every single day is valuable in terms of our social contribution towards accessible and affordable childcare, health, youth services and supporting people with disabilities. Yet this good work is very much unseen and unsung. We make a valuable contribution to the community. Whether it surprises people or not, our alternative community plan for Wards Corner is viable, is affordable and would of course involve a full renovation and upgrade of the whole facility to provide a diverse and genuinely unique landmark that would serve as a gateway to Tottenham. The developer has not complied with one of the most important parts of the Section 106 agreement on supporting existing market traders. Haringey Council cannot continue to tacitly let this continue to happen and give a green light to this development. On one hand, while seeking to launch a Fairness Commission, on the other hand, we have been to judicial review almost 3 times. We have now filed a race discrimination case against the developer's agent, Quarterbridge, the so-called market facilitator. Disabled trader Fabian has filed a discrimination claim after he had been unfairly served with an eviction notice. Victoria here has been fairly evicted from one of her units and has suffered victimisation and harassment since Quarterbridge's appointment. Disabled trader Fernando has been intimidated by Quarterbridge, the director of Quarterbridge, and received threats after he gave evidence here in this room at the CPO public inquiry. In our first public traders meeting with Quarterbridge, the director used language with racist undertones. If Granger were trying to do the opposite of what the Section 106 agreement required, it would look exactly as it looks today. With all the valuable diversity and community contribution of the Latin Village, for it to be demolished for a development that has zero affordable housing on public transport for London land, to replace it in one which will make no impact whatsoever on Haringey Council's extensive housing waiting list, just wouldn't be sensible or sustainable, and it certainly would not be fair. What we want, Haringey Council to withdraw, annul its partnership with Quarterbridge MAM due to the abuses that have been investigated by Transport for London, acknowledged by the United Nations, and the discrimination claim filed against them. Haringey Council to withdraw the CPO or not go ahead with it.
Okay, thank you very much for your deputation today. What I'm going to do is to ask the Cabinet colleagues whether or not they've got any questions for the Deputy and the Deputy's party. Councillor Hearn, I can see you. Councillor Hearn.
Are you able to say what the progress of the discrimination actions have been? How far have you got?
We filed a discrimination claim in November 2017 with the firm Bymans. They're the ones that did the judicial review almost 3 times against Haringey Council.
Okay, any other questions?
Distribute the
Okay, what would work, since we're not going to be discussing that with the report today, I'm quite happy if you leave it with the clerk, and the clerk will ensure that Cabinet members get a copy of the report. Okay? Can I ask just one final thing? Obviously, the Fairness Commission is going to be taking evidence from all communities about how they think that Haringey as a borough should be fairer. How do you, what specific things would you want the Fairness Commission to deliver for your campaign?
to have the opportunity to take part in the evidence-gathering phase of the Fairness Commission, and for Haringey Council to open up dialogue with us and hear what we've got to say and be willing to meet with us, and to look again at Ward's Corner with fresh eyes, review the evidence and the options, and judge the case of the Latin Village and Ward's Corner on its merits.
Okay. Okay, there being no other questions from the Cabinet, I'll ask Councillor Brabazon to respond, please. Councillor Brabazon.
Well, I want to, first of all, thank you for such a fantastic presentation, which covered so many areas. I have to say, reaching far beyond the remit of our Fairness Commission. I can assure you that what we want to do in the Fairness Commission is to hear evidence from all corners of the borough, all communities, residents, traders, businesses, voluntary groups, experts, with a view to assisting us in shaping our policies as a new administration. And I can only say that I would expect that we would hear from you and would... Sorry, can you hear me?
Turn your volume down, that might help a bit.
I don't know how you do that. Oh, right. I was told to bring it forward. Okay. And to invite you to submit evidence, both in writing, because we will be... our website will be going live in the next couple of days, and we are inviting people to give evidence, their stories, the stories that you've just described in some detail about the discrimination and so on, and the implications for our policy making. Our intention is that this would cover many areas, because people's stories cover all sorts of things. And we do have several themes which are in the report, which I shall be referring to shortly. I am interested that you highlighted childcare, as indeed that is an area of particular concern to many families in the borough, and how the council shapes its policies in relation to childcare could have an impact which could be positive or not so positive. So I accept entirely the points you make, and I want to thank you very much indeed for coming.
Okay. Again, thank you very much. You're welcome. You're welcome to take a seat and to follow us as we take on the next part of the committee proceedings this evening. Okay. Now we move on to the consideration of the report at agenda item number 9 on the Fairness Commission. Councillor Brabazon, do you have anything further to add as an introduction to your report?
Well, there is an introduction which I wrote, and I will just summarise it. As colleagues know, and as members of the public know, our manifesto included a key commitment to establish a Fairness Commission. The aim of the Commission, the central aim, is to make Haringey a fairer borough for our residents, our many diverse communities, and for our businesses. We have had 8 years of continuous cuts in this borough and searing government austerity. This has had a massive and huge impact on the council's ability to meet local needs, as I'm sure everyone in this room knows. Valued services have been affected, and the council has had to make some very difficult decisions. However, despite this, the council can still set priorities, establish policies, and use its resources to tackle inequality. That's the challenge of this Fairness Commission: how we use our resources, how we apply them, how we create policies which are a scaffold by which inequality can be challenged and mitigated. Our overarching aim is to improve the quality of life in Haringey by making it a fairer place for all who live and work in it. We don't claim that we will get rid of inequality or that we will banish poverty. I think that for even Haringey might be a slightly big claim. However, what we can do is try to reduce the impact and mitigate it and close that massive inequality gap which we know exists in this borough beyond any borough in London, probably in the country. Our Commission will conduct a detailed and wide-ranging inquiry, and we will invite residents, community groups, partners, experts and businesses to share experiences, ideas and knowledge. Through listening, dialogue and discussion, this collective information will assist our commissioners in agreeing a set of recommendations and proposals for what Haringey could do to make Haringey that fairer and more equal borough. Commissioners being invited to participate in this project are drawn largely from our local communities, and working with officers done our best to try and have a diverse group of commissioners who do represent the diversity of our community. The commissioners invited bring vast skills from many different perspectives, and it's our intention that they are themselves representative of the borough's diversity, and they will join key partners and myself in holding sessions around the borough. Our intention is to involve fellow councillors, and I believe this is central to the success of the Commission. As decision makers and elected representatives, it is important that councillors themselves hear people's stories firsthand, people's experiences and professional perspectives, which will assist us in shaping recommendations on how the Council can use its powers and resources to impact on and mitigate inequality. I am proposing that the Commission will be cross-party. We are very pleased that we will be working with the opposition, who are fully supportive of the Fairness Commission, and we will also be establishing a cross-party member or backbencher reference group to help shape the work of the Commission, and that some backbench councillors, including the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, are commissioners. I think it would be fair to say that one of the key things we want in this administration is to involve our backbenchers much more in how we shape decisions, so there is not the separation between the executive and the backbenchers. Ultimately, it is our aim to ensure we become a fairer borough. This is a huge task, and as I've got more involved in working to develop this project, I can see it's even bigger than perhaps we thought it was when we put it in the manifesto. But along with the participation and involvement of our partners and communities, I hope this will help us set out how we intend to achieve this goal, and at the same time build trust with our communities in the ability of the Council to support them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brabazon. Do Cabinet member colleagues have any questions to ask on the report? Councillor Hearn.
This is, I think this is a very exciting initiative, and I don't envy you the great long list of things you said you're going to look at. I've got two kind of areas to ask. One is actually, do you have a sense of key priorities, or what will shift other things if you look at it first? Is there like something that's like the golden key, I guess, to some of the things you want to do? And the second question I have is, we're very fond of like meetings and things, and I'm wondering how you will engage evidence, from people who find those kinds of environments difficult through, language or whatever it is, and whether you've thought of any innovative ways to kind of like go out and get the evidence in a different way.
Councillor Brabazon.
Regarding priorities, we have put a set of themes into the report, which I wish to say at this point are not exhaustive, and neither are they absolute, because I think part of this process is organic, and as people discuss it and add things and we take things away, we're shaping it, and we've only been working on this for a few weeks, so I hope you'll bear with me. But I think absolutely housing. I think we'd all put housing up there. Supply, the affordability, the sustainability and quality of housing. The issues about the private rented sector and all the other issues associated with housing. Having heard children speak eloquently about their experiences living in the private rented sector at a hustings during the local elections, I can't emphasise enough how important it is to hear people's stories and the difference that it makes to hear human experience. Finance. I don't think we could ever run a Fairness Commission without talking about issues of debt, access to credit and finance support, rising household costs, We have included the issue of availability and affordability of childcare within this theme. We could equally have put it within education, depending on whether you see childcare as an educational activity or an employment activity. But it is there. Inequalities that arise from ownership of property and people who don't, and the impact of welfare reform, particularly the universal credit, which is going to hit this borough in October 2018. Issues about our communities and our neighbourhoods, for example, safety and security. The issue of social networks. I just noticed, for example, there's a big bidding round that's just come out from the government about funding projects to tackle loneliness and social isolation. Those are big issues for very many of our vulnerable and older communities. Accessibility to facilities. How does our pricing policy impact, for example? And access to information and the feeling of how you become engaged. Those are some of the themes. We have got a theme on health and well-being, children education, issues of mental health. You can pick, there's a whole basket of these themes. The question is how we're going to narrow it down, I think, because to be colloquial, how long is a piece of string? In regards to engagement and getting evidence, the intention is to go around the borough and have hearings in different parts of the borough, wide public meetings where people can come and give evidence. At the same time, we've also talked about holding some thematic events, because we have to carve it up somehow, so to put it into some themes, and with 20 plus commissioners it would be possible to have panels. I was very struck by some of the work Islington did to reach out to people, where people who were very nervous about speaking in public about very sensitive issues, they invited people in and they were tape recorded, well, it's a bit old fashioned, audioed, and that was, their recordings were played at the public hearing, but anonymously, for example, I think. So getting people who had sensitive experiences, who were nervous. Obviously, if we're going to go to groups with disabilities, we have to think hard about signers or whatever. So I can only say we are, with a really dedicated team of officers who I want to thank in public, really thinking about all these themes. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Brabazon. Anybody else from the Cabinet? Okay, are there any other councillors present who wish to ask a question on this? I'm sorry, Councillor Barnes, I can't see you. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you. Quickly, and I understand this is a work in progress, so the questions are to Councillor Brabazon. The first report is obviously not yet done in full, but will that be conducted regularly, so every 5 years or so, to see if there are new inequalities, so we couldn't have anticipated digital in the way that it is now, maybe 7 or 8 years ago? And what does success look like, and how will we be able to measure that, or is that yet to be determined? And finally, one of the co-chairs or the proposed co-chairs, has a background in urban studies, and I know that that's a key part of what the Commission will be considering, but you have a list of various other key themes as well, and I wondered what mechanisms are in place to ensure the committee approaches those different topics and that it's handling them in a balanced way. Thank you.
Councillor Brabazon.
Learning from other boroughs, they, well, certainly in Islington, they have an annual review of their Fairness Commission, which they conducted over 8 years ago, and they have a work programme to measure their outcomes against their fairness objectives, and I think that is a very, very useful benchmark, and I certainly agree we should be reviewing it, because once we shape our recommendations, you have to measure yourself against whether you have achieved them. And I also think your point about digital is very well made, so I agree with that. And yes, we will. What does success look like? Well, I suppose I don't want to preempt our cabinet or the officers or leadership. We're going to have recommendations which will have to be discussed by the council, as we discussed last night. And what does it look like? I suppose if we implement policies which are workable and which do mitigate the poverty or some of the problems which affect people so unequally across this borough. I don't want to give an example because I think that would preempt it, if you don't mind. And your one, I've forgotten your last one. I wrote it down. What was your last question?
It was to do with the proposed co-chair who has a background in regeneration particularly. How will we balance that with the other themes that the Commission sets to consider?
We have invited commissioners who have a broad range of experience. So, for example, the Director of Mind in Haringey has agreed to join the Commission. We have, I'm trying to think who we've got, it's gone out of my head. People who come from different walks of life. We've got the Director of the Selby Trust has agreed to be a member of the Commission, and the Director of the Bridge Renewal Trust, and they bring with them very different experience of different types of community work, and indeed open up the possibility to engage with their wider membership. So overall, we're trying to balance different people with different skills. We've invited the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny to be a part, who brings her own experience of working in the voluntary sector. I'm afraid everybody has to represent lots of different things, because in the end we can't have everybody representing everything, but we are doing our best.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brabazon. Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Okay, please, can we turn to page 181, either electronically or, if you're like me, on the old paper version. The recommendations are at paragraphs 3, A to D. Okay, Cabinet colleagues, is that agreed? Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, I am also proposing to vary the agenda further to consider the third representation from Unison in relation to the shared digital implementation at item 12. We have a deputation from Mr. Gerard McGrath. Is he here? Ah, the man in the resplendent suit. Mr. McGrath, you have 3 minutes to address the Cabinet. No, only 10 minutes.
You're very kind, Chair. Probably it's good to be here at this historic point in Cabinet in Haringey. The shared digital service at times has experienced problems in its management from its inception a number of years ago. There have been at times management failings, particularly with regard to effective communication, whereby our members in Haringey have been left in an ongoing state of confusion and deep anxiety for the last 2 years. So we want to make the following short points. We continue to be concerned about the short timeline for TUPE, and in particular where a number of our members, if not all of them, are concerned that they might end up working for Camden rather than the borough they chose, Haringey. We welcome the reduced scope of the proposal, but feel it lacks clarity and needs further work, particularly in terms of posts, which may straddle both services intended for sharing and those to be retained. If the unions and management cannot reach an agreement on a delegated decision, we believe that the report should be signed off by Cabinet. And that's something that myself and Sean Fox, who is my joint branch secretary colleague, is more than willing to have that discussion with management in more detail. We are concerned that the option of alternatives to TUPE are not being considered properly. We feel further options work needs to be carried out. Staff faced with TUPE are considering leaving. And just to give you an idea, one of the proposals with regard to TUPE is to, for example, TUPE 50 members from each borough, from Camden, Haringey and Islington. Now, if you did that to Haringey, we would have no IT department because we're the smallest of the 3 boroughs, and that reflects the proportionality issues that we've got concerns about too. We believe that there will be a worrying lack of control for Haringey if this model is adopted, Camden will dictate the terms and conditions, and our members' terms and conditions will be under attack if this went ahead in this way. Finally, that the model may not actually prove to be the best value option if the costs are divided equally, as currently our services in Haringey are smaller than those of the other two potential partners. So what we want to do, the conversation we want to have, is about the detail of this proposal. If the proposal to TUPE our members goes ahead, then we want our members to fully understand that when it comes to it, they know what the deal is. They know who they want to work for. And for the record, our members don't want to work for Camden. They want to work for Haringey.
Thank you very much, Mr McGrath. Cabinet, any questions for the deputies, please? Okay. Councillor Brabazon.
You've been very blunt about your members' views. Have you had several meetings with them? Has there been a consultation?
There's been a form of consultation when the idea for the TUPE plan was launched. This is Kevin. Kevin is our IT Unison member on the ground, and he can answer the question in more detail if you'd like.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, we have had discussions. We've also had or attended several what are termed huddles through. Richard is not here, sorry. Richard Grice organised one last week. We had this was in response to this proposal being put forward. And even non-members, obviously there's a mix of members and non-members within the IT service, and I was quite surprised of how vocal and again how blunt some of these guys were in caring for what they do, the service they provide for Haringey, and not wanting to be part of a Camden-controlled, and I mean totally controlled Camden service as part of a TUPE process. The other thing that concerned them was there's no clarity at the moment on who stays and who goes. You know, it's that blunt as well. So that's why we question the signing of this tonight.
Okay, Councillor Ahmed.
So we just had confirmation as well, but just to declare an interest, I am a Unison branch secretary in Merton. Yeah, and I've got a question actually. Gerard, you said alternatives to 2P weren't considered. Can you just say a bit about the alternatives that you have in mind? What alternatives did you mean?
Well, just one example is secondment. And I think it's in line with Section 113 of the Local Government Act. And we've been given an assurance by management that they're more than happy to sit down and discuss this in more detail. But obviously, as the report is written and now come to Cabinet, we wanted to formally raise our concerns about this proposal.
Okay, thank you for that. I note that we've got a couple of additional declarations from Unison members, and can we consider them to have been declared?
Sorry, just Councillor Ibrahim, just to declare I'm a trade union full-time rep for the London Borough of Redbridge as a branch secretary.
Noah Tucker, not only as the Cabinet member responsible for this service area, I am also a Unison member of Bexley branch of Unison.
Does it count if you're a retired member? I don't know. Get a newsletter.
This is just quite an outrageously left-wing council. What's going on? Councillor Ajay.
Thank you, Chair. Although I'm not a Unison member, I'm a GMB branch secretary with the London Fire Brigade, but because we are discussing TUPE issues, I felt it should be declared.
Okay, that's almost everybody. Right. Councillor Berryman.
I suppose we're all doing it. I think I'm a member of Unison still. I'm not working in that area, but I was a member up till last summer and probably still am. Yeah. I am, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Weston.
Well, if we're going around the table, I'm not a member of Unison, but I am a member of a trade union, UCU.
fine. I won't declare myself then. No problems. Okay, Councillor Tucker, if you'd like to respond, please.
Yes, I'd like to thank Gerard, Kevin, the entire workforce and the trade unions. Thanks very, very much for this delegation and your continued involvement. And the points that you've made both to management and to myself, having met with Unison partly to discuss this particular issue. I wish to assure the workforce and Unison that we note and respect all the points that are being raised. We don't dismiss any of those. They are real issues, and we want to ensure that we have the workforce fully on board as we carry out this programme. We have a target date, but we are not regarding this as a fixed, hard deadline. I do want to emphasise this because we want to make certain that we are working fully in agreement with yourselves, and we will be maintaining discussions. And that will be on a twofold basis. So firstly, official discussions between management and the trade unions, and I myself will be meeting the unions separately to discuss various issues, including these. On the issue of delegation, the power of delegation to officers, I want to give another assurance that I am in close contact with this issue, and this is not a decision that will be taken by officers alone. It will be in consultation with myself as the relevant cabinet member, and I will obviously be discussing the issues with the relevant political colleagues.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for your deputation today. You're more than happy to stay whilst we discuss the substantive item. Thank you very much. Okay. Shared digital service implementation. Can we now move on to consider the actual report in detail? Councillor Tucker, do you have anything further? Calm down. Do you have anything further to add to the introduction?
Very briefly, because you have the detail in front of you. I've covered some of the issues in my response with the unions. We are intending to move forward with this on an agreed basis. However, the reason this is being brought to Cabinet is there is a change of approach. We are looking at a smaller proportion of the IT service being run jointly by the three boroughs, and we intend to retain more of our IT support to the council itself under direct council, Haringey Council control, and that will mean a proportion, and I think the largest proportion of our staff remaining directly employed by and under the control of Haringey Council. I want to emphasise, however, that we are committed to moving towards a partly shared service, and I would add that we believe we are on track for savings of around 2.4 million in terms of procurement, which is a very significant sum, by means of the economies of scale of jointly purchasing services and equipment.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Tucker. Can I ask, do any Cabinet colleagues have any questions? Councillor Brabazon.
In your introduction, you say, hang on, I'm just getting to it here. In your, sorry, excuse me, I'll just get there. You say that you will be working with staff to design the details. Can you tell us how you intend to do that?
Okay, I think that may be a slight exaggeration to say we'll be designing the details, but we will be looking in detail with staff at every aspect of this programme. And as I said, that will be done in two ways. So firstly, by regular meetings between management and the trade unions, and also I'll be having my own separate meetings with the trade unions to discuss all aspects of the programme.
Okay. Do we have any other councillors who wish to raise any questions on this report? Okay. Right, then, can I ask if the Cabinet can please turn to page 237 and 238 of the report. The recommendations are at paragraphs 3.1 to 3.1.7. Very odd. Okay, having reread those recommendations, can we agree them? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, we now go back to earlier items that we've passed over because of the deputations. I'd now like to move to item number 10, which is pages 187 to 204, setting up of a wholly owned company for housing development. I think that's a walk. Councillor Ibrahim, would you like to introduce your report, please?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Reggie-Forth. So I'll start briefly, but obviously there is a substantial report there. So Haringey's Labour councillors were elected on a bold manifesto which placed housing at its heart. Our manifesto committed to deliver at least 1,000 new council homes at council rents by 2022, and that our preference is to build council housing directly through a company which we fully own. It went on to be clear that we would deliver these 1,000 new homes for families on the waiting list by 2022 and ensure that wherever possible the council's public lands and the homes built on it remain in the council's ownership. Our decision this evening to establish the wholly owned company to drive housing development in Haringey is a clear move to change the direction of housing in Haringey. The council owns a number of sites in the borough on which new housing development is possible, and we are committed to maximising the number of council rented homes that will be delivered on these sites. I will be working with all members to seek to identify them and bring forward sites in their own wards, ensuring that residents all across the borough can benefit from the new council-owned housing of the highest quality. I do need to be clear, however, that 2 sites that are named in this report are among those that have been proposed for development in the HDV, which you will see in the contents of the report. That means that the final 2 bullets of the recommendation 3.6 in this report can be approved now, but is subject to the decision to be taken at item 19.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ibrahim. Cabinet, do we have any questions for this report? Okay, are there any councillors who have any questions on this report? Can I ask Councillor White to get a little bit larger and taller so I can't see Councillor Barnes behind him? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you. Just 2 questions. In 3.4, it refers to the £500,000 from the Flexible Homelessness Support Grant being reallocated from another project. And I think later on it does refer to that money coming back, but in the interim, who loses out on that money? And the second question was around paragraph 6.20 and 6.21, where the WOC will not usually be able to deliver larger schemes, so anything over 150 to 200 homes, develop commercial property or carry out estate renewals. So is there a time frame for developing this capacity, or is that never going to be something it does? And therefore, will there be other organisations doing the larger projects potentially, because we have a lot of people to house, as you know, Amina?
So what I'm going to do is, because they're quite technical questions, can I refer to officers to respond on that?
Surely. Thank you, Councillor. On the question of the Flexible Homelessness Support Grant, it isn't taking it away from projects that are to which it's currently been allocated. It's a 3-year funding programme we have, which is entirely flexible, and there's money that's in advance paid for next year, so we can move the money around and repay it as the costs of the wholly owned company become capitalised once the first scheme's up and running. So there's no projects that will be defunded because of this funding being moved into funding instead of cost of the walk. And also, it's the maximum figure of £500,000 for setup. That's to make sure we can cover the cost. We expect it to be much less than that, but we'll report on that in October and November when the final report comes back to Cabinet. On the second question, how long will it take to be able to grow from doing what are very straightforward sites to be able to do much more ambitious, complex, multi-use sites? That kind of depends on how good we get, how quickly. I haven't got a straight answer to that. Most local authorities that have set up wholly owned companies of these types to do development do take some years to get towards doing those big developments. And what often is the problem is they've taken on the very big, complex developments first. You'll see from what's identified in this report and what will come forward in the other sites we're looking at, they are sites in our ownership, so we don't have to deal with buying land. They are sites that are actually usually in and around existing housing already, and there are sites that we think are of a size that can be brought forward reasonably straightforwardly. So we hope to be able to get on site very, very quickly, rather than trying to struggle with the very large, complex developments. As they will have to come forward through other forms of development.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barnes. Any other councillors present with any questions on this report? Okay, right. Cabinet, can we please turn to page 189 and page 190 of the Cabinet pack? The recommendations are at paragraphs 3.1 to 3.6. And let us be noted again that the final two bullet points of 3.6 are subject to another decision that we might or might not take later today. Under those parameters, can we agree that? Is that agreed? Lovely. Thank you very much. Item number 11. Setting up of a community benefit society to deliver improved housing options for households presenting as homeless. In your pack, this is pages 205 to 234. Councillor Ibrahim, could you introduce this report, please?
So, so this is a bit of a kind of follow-on from the last report. So, again, our manifesto was clear that we need to act decisively on reducing homelessness, and all too often the conditions that that people are in temporary accommodation, which we have nearly 3,000 households in, are extremely poor. And obviously, we all know the knock-on effect that has on education, health and crime. And because there is also a regular churn of families and children in temporary accommodation, this idea is a form of an intervention within that process. So again, we promise that Labour will deliver housing differently, and alongside the decision to establish the wholly owned company, we want to obviously make an improved offer to people in temporary accommodation as well, who may be in temporary accommodation for a long time, and obviously that's at a very high cost to the council as well. The other part of this decision is to set up a community benefit society, and in many ways this is more of a safety mechanism. So these are kind of processes which began in the previous administration. So we know that there's a changing climate and a changing framework around how we may in future be able to use right to buy receipts, how we may fund projects within the wholly owned vehicle. But what we've decided, what we're recommending, is that we still move forward with these proposals, and then we explore later on in the year whether this is a type of partnership we may or may not want to pursue. But the part of the decision which is about the purchase and repair and management partnership is just to allow it to go to the next stage of the procurement, which began earlier in the year, and then subsequently at a later point to decide whether we would want to pursue this model.
Okay, thank you very much. Cabinet, any questions for Councillor Ibrahim on this report? Okay, can I ask if any other councillors have any questions? Councillor Barnes.
Sorry, I am representing all the Liberal Democrat councillors today. It's not just me. But yes, so hopefully not too long. So one of the questions is, why is it taken until now for the council to propose a community benefit society, considering that the power was provided to councils in the Localism Act of 2011? That was one. Point 3.6.2 shows up to 100 units to be acquired for £25 million, which assumes an average purchase price of £250,000. I'd be delighted if properties were available at that price in Haringey. So what types of properties are required and what will we actually get in Haringey for that money? And finally, what discussions have been had with potential partners for the purchase, repair and management partnerships? What kind of organisations and businesses seem to be interested?
So, these are really good questions. So in terms of the Community Benefit Society, like I said earlier on, this actually what we're proposing is to do this or to set this up more as a safety mechanism in terms of what we actually think that perhaps we may be able to do all of these things as part of the wholly owned vehicle. In terms of the purchase and repair scheme, I'll again refer to officers about what and how much. I mean, I know you can purchase properties through the planning system, perhaps for that kind of price. But again, it's temporary accommodation. Some of it may be outside the borough, within the surrounding boroughs.
Okay, two questions there. One about the the costs of the properties that we're purchasing. The 100 million and the 250 properties, that's actually a double lock. Sorry, the 100 million, sorry, the 100 properties and 25 million. We've got the numbers wrong way around. The 100 properties and 25 million, that's a double lock. We're not expecting to buy 100 properties for £25 million. What we're saying in here is give Cabinet confidence, is that if we get to 100 properties or we get to 25 million, we'll come back and ask and make sure Cabinet are happy with what we've done so far and get agreement to carry on forward with it. We're modelling, to be honest, in our model, about 360,000 on average for the cost of the properties we're going to buy. So that's likely there. But it is possible we may be able to, as Enfield have done, buy a block off the stocks, which has just been built, which will be a lot less than 360,000 per unit. But we're assuming at the moment there will be individual opportunistic street property purchases at 360,000 each. The second question, which is which organisations have been bid for the pram and what engagement has there been. There was a formal procurement process which was started just before last Christmas and finished in January. 3 bidders are identified as meeting our requirements. We've had initial meetings with them, gone through their bids, but then we put it on pause until we had the new administration in power and we could come back and explain what we're planning to do to make sure they're comfortable with how it's going forward. Now the administration has kind of seen what the plan is, we can get into the second stage of negotiations with those 3. So it would be premature at this point to sort of put in the public domain what their 3 names are, those organisations, but that will clearly be identified if we go ahead to the next stage, which would be finalising procurement and making a recommendation to go ahead with the project.
Am I allowed to follow up? I'm still getting my procedures right.
Not really.
I'll do that another time. Thank you.
But on this occasion, a quick one.
It was just quickly, and you may not have answers to this, but when you say outside of the borough, it would be how far out and roughly what percentage of people may we look to put in homes outside of the borough?
The current modelling we're doing is expecting anything outside the borough to be in contiguous local authorities, so be boroughs that touch this borough, so it wouldn't be further than Enfield, Waltham Forest, Barnet, etc. So that's how far they'll go. But we are modelling that most of the properties we acquire would be in borough where we possibly can.
Okay, I note that I actually missed Councillor Brabazon earlier on, so I'm going to come back to Councillor Brabazon.
In the on page 207, it says the homes acquired will be better quality and better managed, either by a registered provider or Homes for Haringey. I'm surprised to see that there would be a registered provider there. Can you comment on that? Why wouldn't all be Homes for Haringey?
The ones that we acquire through the CBS will all be Homes for Haringey, definitely, because they'll be in council ownership. It's the ones through the PRAM that might be managed by a registered provider, because a couple of the organisations that have made a bid have made a consortium bid with a registered provider already in the bid, and that actually brings down their costs. So we'll need to take those into account.
Okay, those that were paying attention, we noticed not only have we got a WOC, we've got a PRAM as well. Okay, can I ask, there being no further questions, can we turn to pages 208 and 209 of the Cabinet Pack? The recommendations are paragraphs 3.1 to 3.6.3. Are we happy to agree with those? Can we agree with that? Lovely, thank you very much. Item number 13, laptop and desktop refresh, pages 263 to 270 in your pack. Councillor Tucker, please can you introduce your report.
So, thank you, Leader. This is about capital investment to ensure that our staff can continue to do their jobs properly, to maintain information security and also to realise efficiencies across the Council. So currently our stock of IT equipment is getting old. We're still using Windows 7, which is obsolete and will soon cease to be supported. We're moving towards a situation where staff need to be using Windows 10 and we need to be able to use Office 365 to its fullest extent. And for that reason, we need to allocate funding of up to 4.1 million, and I need to emphasise this is capital funding and it's not a revenue allocation, in order that we can continue to purchase and roll out the necessary equipment for our staff.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Tucker. Colleagues, are there any questions for Councillor Tucker on this report? Okay, there being no questions from the Cabinet, I'm just going to cut to the chase and say, oh, sorry, Councillor Ajay, apologies.
Leader, sorry about that. I wonder if Councillor Tucker can comment on the if any equality impact assessment was carried out in the development of the report.
Yes, I can confirm that we have used an equalities impact assessment screening tool to assess the impact of phase 2 of the programme, and I wish to assure colleagues and the staff that we are maintaining the utmost attention on access issues and the ability particularly of disabled members of staff to have full access to the equipment.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions from the Cabinet? Councillor Ajay is obviously not happy. So, Charles.
On the contrary, I used to be responsible for that. Just to, I know you said it's capital. Are there in future going to be any revenue cost associated with the expenditure, initial expenditure?
My understanding, unless my officer colleagues, I'm being reassured on that. That is my understanding, and in fact we are hoping to release efficiency savings as a result of the rollout of newer and better equipment and systems across the Council.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions from any other councillors present? Okay. Right. Can I then ask Cabinet to turn to page 264 of the Cabinet bundle? The recommendation for this report is at paragraph 3.1. Is that agreed? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, next item. These are a set of scrutiny reports. These are matters referred to the Cabinet by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. There were a number of declarations earlier on today, so we will not be doing this as we usually might. Given the distinct powers of Cabinet and Scrutiny located in the Local Government Act 2000 and consolidated by the Localism Act and the personal declarations of interest at the start of this meeting, as I've said, will not be taking forward presentations of the scrutiny reviews. These have been agreed by the Scrutiny Committee in March this year, and we will proceed to consider the responses to the scrutiny recommendations in line with Cabinet responsibilities. So, the first one is going to be at 14A. This is the Cabinet response to the scrutiny review on social housing. Page Recommendations made in this report can be used to help... Sorry, bear with me one moment. I'm on the wrong page. It's supposed to be 14, which is here. Thank you very much. I'm still trying to get to grips with the whole concept of a paperless council. Whilst I can read it in paper, I can't read it on the laptop. I cannot find it on the laptop. So I still need to practice that. Thank you, Councillor Hearn. I will go to a training session. Okay, page 277. Okay, page 271 then. Right, it was just... hold on. Don't worry, they'll be able to edit this out of the final version. Right, page 271, Social Housing Scrutiny Reports. The recommendations made in this report can be used to help guide the development of the policy agenda in housing, regeneration and planning for this new administration. Whilst the report does not set out a detailed list of explicit objectives to be delivered to a given timescale, it does propose a clear direction of travel for policy in these areas. Many of the recommendations are positive and are either currently being incorporated into the Council's approach or can easily be incorporated going forward. Some recommendations present challenges to implementation and have therefore been responded to cautiously with partial agreement. Specific reasons for each recommendation response are given in Appendix 2. The overall approach of the report, which is comprehensive and detailed, is a helpful framework to inform the future housing policy of this Council. Okay, can I ask any Cabinet members who are able to ask any questions, do you have any questions? Can I ask if there are any other councillors present, whether you have any questions? No, actually Matt needs to grow. I can't see her behind you otherwise, yeah? Councillor Barnes.
That means he needs to shrink. Just one question. In the light of the partial acceptance of recommendation 13, which is around sprinklers and retrofitting them as well as putting them into new build, which is very welcome, will other safety measures be being re-examined? So, for example, checking the fire doors are all up to the highest standard and handheld fire extinguishers, among other things.
Okay, I'm going to pass this on to Alan Benson to respond to.
Yes, in fact, they already are being implemented. The Homes of Haringey have undertaken reviewing all fire risk assessments. They've checked all fire doors. They've done a thorough review of all the blocks we have, not just for sprinklers, but for all other fire safety mechanisms, to make sure it's all working. Fire doors, etc., all being checked out.
Okay, thank you for your question. Okay, are we able to turn to page 271? The recommendations are at 3.1, 3.2. The appendices are 281?
Yeah, Appendix 2.
Appendix 2. Okay, so, okay, 3.1 talks about Appendix 1, 3.2 talks about Appendix 2. Are we able to agree these as recommendations going forward? Can we agree? Agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. The next one is the Cabinet response to the scrutiny review on parks. Here, the recommendations are a positive contribution to improving the management and protection of parks in the borough. Haringey parks are well used. Millions of visits are made to our parks and open spaces each year, and it's clear that our parks are enjoyed and valued across the council with partners and residents. And even the families of Cabinet members go to parks as well. We were there in the park a couple of days ago. It was great, you know, and the weather was wonderful as well. It's therefore encouraging to note that evidence received by the committee reflects this, and the recommendations will help to support and protect our parks in the long term. This is an important and timely review that will help us shape the forthcoming parks strategy to be developed collaboratively over the next 12 months. We recognise that there are always improvements to be made to enhance parks users' experience, and the recommendation will support the Council and partners to raise standards in a sustainable way. This has been a useful piece of work in ensuring that our parks are of a high standard. I am particularly pleased that the Friends of the Parks groups have been involved in this review. It is important that users' groups are involved in the use and development of their parks. Parks play an important part in promoting health and well-being. Are there any questions from the Cabinet members able to ask questions? Are there any questions? Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to raise an issue from my portfolio, and that's with regards to the development of sports pitches in our parks. I was involved in a recent meeting with the Tottenham Hotspurs Foundation, and if you go into any Islington green space, obviously they have a lot less than we do, you will find an all-weather football pitch, possibly most of them I think done in partnership with the Arsenal Foundation. You know, I think if we can explore possibilities to extend that, particularly in the context of the discussions that we had last night at full council and the challenges we face around young people and activities.
Thank you for that, Councillor Blake. I'm sure next time you have a conversation with the Tottenham Foundation, you'll be pointing out that it would be really good if they helped contribute and pay for some of these. I'm assuming that that's something you'll be able to do. Okay. Any backbenchers or any other councillors present who might have a question? Councillor Hare. Welcome.
Three short questions. The first one is just I would like Cabinet to note the report at page 379, point 14, where the recommendation is partially agreed. I understand that, but I think that the rationale given, which is that majority of the council's Haringey's parks are already protected, for example, MOL, as SINC, Sites of Interest, Nature Conservation, and a few others. Those protections are nowhere near as strong as that given by the Fields in Trust, putting them under Fields for Trust. And that point is really that the Fields in Trust protection is much greater, and that isn't clear from the response. And I don't know whether that can be minuted or taken on board. I understand the rest of the point about the lack of resources for the officer needed to do that, but it is quite a small investment for a lot of protection. Do you want me to deal with the other questions at the same time? Okay. I'll go through the others, I'm sorry. Pushing the wrong buttons. So as part of the park strategy, which is being developed over the next 12 months, will there be a review and revised recommendations about large events in our parks, which can close a large part of a park, for example Finsbury Park, to residents for a number of weeks in the summer months, when parks are most vital for the health and well-being of residents, especially those without gardens? And the third question is, with regards to recommendation 16, can we have a timescale for the delivery of this report and reassurance that this report will include a breakdown of both income and how the income will be reinvested with specific spending items park by park?
Okay, I'm going to pass the first question over to the relevant director to respond. I'm going to give you answers on 2 and 3, which are yes and yes.
Okay, with regards to the first question, obviously we've stated in our response that the cost of putting Fields in Trust is £150,000, £3,000 per park, plus the additional cost of an officer. Our response is based on the element of risk to the park. We feel that with regards to the protections that do exist within their existing categorisations, means that really, in looking at cost benefits, we should really focus on those 10 parks themselves, which are more at risk, and don't think it gives value for money in terms of delivering the whole Fields in Trust for all our parks.
Not this time. Maybe next time. All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Hare. Okay. Where we are at the moment is we are looking at the recommendations which are on page 336. Okay. Are we able to agree those? Can we agree? Lovely. Thank you very much. The next one is a Cabinet response to scrutiny review on support to children from refugee families. I'm going to pass this on to Councillor Weston to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This report, I'd like to start, I suppose, by saying thank you to the panel for highlighting a number of the issues that are faced by families who are either from a refugee background, for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and in particular families who have no recourse to public funds, and also to thank those people and organisations that took part in the work of the committee and contributed to it. The report does highlight the many issues that affect our NRPF families, and also highlights and considers the complexities and challenges involved in delivering services and supporting those families. We've heard reference this evening, I think, from Councillor Brabazon to the impacts of austerity in the borough, and we know that very, very tragically, 1 in 3 children in Haringey live in poverty. Our NRPF families are further disadvantaged by central government policies which preclude them from accessing the welfare system and impose delays in terms of Home Office decisions on their immigration status. In that context, we do welcome the report, and we're very keen to work to implement the recommendations to the best of our ability, and in doing so we're committed to working with organisations who support our NRPF families to make sure we get the right outcomes for them. So if I could ask colleagues to turn to paragraph 3.1, which is at page 384 of the Cabinet pack, and agree the recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor, before we get there, can I just ask you any other questions, to Councillor Weston on this? None from the Cabinet. Any questions from the floor? None from the floor. Okay. Then we've got the recommendations. Can we agree the recommendations? Agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much. The fourth report is the Cabinet response to scrutiny review on restorative justice. Councillor Weston.
So I suppose on behalf of Councillor Blake, who can't respond because he was on the committee that made these recommendations, again, I do welcome these recommendations and this report and thank the committee and those who contributed to it again. I'd be keen to work with Councillor Blake to implement some of these recommendations as far as they fall within my portfolio, and I know Councillor Blake is keen to do the same in the areas of his portfolio. I think it's fair to say that we would view restorative justice and those practices as a real opportunity to bring improvements specifically to young people in our borough, but also to the wider community. We know that where it works and works well, it can have an impact on improving responses to crime, on reducing crime levels, and from my perspective, in terms of my responsibility for education, in tending to help to reduce the risk of exclusions. So, again, we welcome the recommendations and would ask colleagues to agree them.
Okay. Cabinet, any questions to Councillor Weston? Okay. Any questions from the assembled other councillors? Okay. Are we able to agree those recommendations? Can we agree? Okay. Lovely. That's agreed. Excellent. Item number 15 is minutes of other bodies. These are in your packs, pages 449 to 452. This is for noting. Can we note the minutes of Corporate Parenting Advisory Committee? Is that okay? Noted? Lovely. Significant delegations and significant and delegated actions. This is pages 453 to 462. This is for noting. Okay, to note those. Thank you. Any new items of urgent business? Okay, there being no new items of urgent business, we're now going to move to item number 18. Right, this is the exclusion of press and public from the private parts of the meeting. Please, can the press... I'm now going to ask